help you to protect, accumulate, and to ultimately distribute wealth. Now, go on to the next slide, please. Go ahead and keep that up, if you don't mind. Thank you. All right, go to the next one, please. Okay, we are 48 million strong, yielding about $1.3 trillion in spending. And that is just the facts. So these are some of the current realities that we're dealing with. We have more buying power than the country of Spain, just right here in the United States. Next slide. The average difference in net worth between black families and white families is $154,000. $154,000, and the gap continues to grow. Next slide. Everybody tracking okay? Here we go. So the wealth gap has affected generations of African Americans, manifesting itself in many financial challenges. 1.3 times the student debt. We have more debt 1.3 times than anyone else, than our white counterparts. 2.5 times almost, we will default on the loan, which sets us back even further. As you can see, how the wealth gap will increase. Home ownership. 40% of us own homes when 73% of them own homes. 8% inheritance. I talk to people all the time about, what are you leaving for your children's children? The Word of God tells us to leave something for our children's children, to take care of them. So we do it really well at about 8%, right? And the families, other families, the white families, about at 26%. And even in that, their savings, we only make up 35% of what they do. Next slide. This is what we're not going to do. What we're not going to do is shame people that like nice things. How many of us like nice things? Raise your hands. And it's not here to shame you for it. If you budget it, it works well, and we can talk about that. 2, minimize the realities of institutional disenfranchisement. We know that we live in a society of disenfranchisement. America has a history of racism, but it doesn't matter because God is bigger than disenfranchisement. God is bigger than racism, so we don't worry about that. Pretend that there is a one-size-fits-all solution. Everybody's different. I don't want to say that what works for sister this person is going to work for a brother so-and-so. Everybody is different, and we have to find out, especially what your relationship with money was. Like I said, with me, I just believed that every time I got $1, I held on to that thing till it cried. I just wouldn't want to let that money go. Next, what we're not going to do is introduce the next get-rich-quick scheme. I know that kind of disappoints some people, but we're not going to have, you sign up at the back of the booth, sign up your friends and all that kind of stuff and build our pyramid. We're not going to do that. But what we're not going to, and also we're not going to do is we're not going to focus on feelings, but instead we're going to learn from the facts. Next slide. Also, what we're going to do is discuss strategies that's proven to create wealth, dispel any myths and train of thought that have stagnated our community's wealth, expose potential landmines that can destroy the wealth that we are working so hard to build. We will discuss tangible things that you can do today. So the ushers will be passing out information cards. We ask that you fill them out and be able to schedule a time to meet with us. I'll tell you right up front, we're here for a 30-minute consultation. We're doing it for the church. You don't have to come with any money. Don't expect us to take any money. Not going to be pressed to buy anything. We're here to serve. That is our initial objective. Next slide. There you go. What is wealth? Wealth is a result of a mindset that embraces tried and true habits backed by consistent and persistent action, from Dennis Kimbrough. Next slide. Generational wealth is achieved when you accumulate through assets to pay for your family's living expenses forever without depleting the principal. So in other words, if you have $2 million set aside, that money should generate you about $100,000 a year, and it should last to the rest of your life. And that $2 million that was generating that $100,000 is passed on to the next generation. It can be done. Now, next slide. Generation refers to all the people born and living around the same time. Typically, a generation is 20 to 30 years. All right, next slide. Earn and invest money. So there's 4 ways to build wealth. We're only got time to cover 2 of them. The other 2, most of us, we don't have inherited wealth and wealth gifted to us. And if you have, that's an awesome thing. But first, we're going to talk about earn money and invest. And we're going to also talk about how to buy your wealth. So at this time, I'm going to bring Mr. Dennis to discuss investing. Next slide.
Warren Buffett gives us a really great formula of what sound investing it is. I like to call it the TDP principle. Successful investing takes time, discipline, and patience. And he goes to line that up with, okay, no matter how great your talent is or the effort, it takes time for those things to matriculate to your desired end. You can't produce a baby by getting 9 women pregnant. Okay? I don't care if the math is still 9 months, that's not the way things go. It's an order operation. So the stock market, which is a very known tool across the world, is used to transfer money over time for those that are patient and work the process. Does anyone understand that? Okay, let's talk about another idea. He says, and you don't have to be extraordinary to get those results. You just have to be great at the basics. Just do those small, consistent things over time to get those. Okay, can we please go to the next one, because this is a very powerful slide. I really want everyone to go ahead and get this. This is talking about managing our market expectations. It documents the stock market, the S&P 500 over the last 95 years. And by a show of hands, who can recall the last time that the stock market had a big crash? Y'all remember that, right? But did you know that the stock market over the last 95 years has only been down 26% of the time? Think about that. So if I was going to the riverboat and I sat down at a table, would I want to sit at the table that was 26% or 74% chance of winning? In other words, 74% of the time the stock market produces extraordinary results, a return on your investment. So if you are looking for a long period of investing time, that's a great place to put your money. And smart money knows that. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this talks about prolonged downturns. So yes, the stock market will get a decline, but it doesn't last long. And we have 4 different time periods. We have the Great Depression on the left, World War II, oil crisis, the tech bubble, and the 5th, which is the Great Recession we had in 2008, 2009. It goes down, but as you can see, the recovery is enormous. So if you try to time the market, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And if you please go to the next slide, it's talking about that same number I just showed you, but it's actually giving you a little more detailed look at long-term investing should not be the issue. When the market goes down, let me ask you a question. How many of you guys like sales when you go to the store? Right? So if we're talking about a long period of putting our dollars to work for us, and by the way, we only make money 1 or 2 ways. We either work for our money or our money works for us. There's no other way, okay? So if you want to put your money to work for you, then when the market is lower, that means it's on sale. You understand that? Okay? So keep that in mind. That is very powerful if you can kind of get that. Next, so this one talks about how during the pandemic for white America, their wealth hit an all-time high. But we need to participate in the markets if we want to increase our wealth, not get rich, wealth that we're talking about here. Now, I love this slide because I like to think about this as stock market with mutual funds versus individual stocks. If I'm trying to pick a winner, would I want to try to throw a dart at the dartboard and I'm probably win 66% of the time, or would I just prefer to purchase the whole dartboard or the whole haystack and buy a whole swat of companies and give myself a 99% chance of being successful? Which one makes more sense? Right. So that's what we really have to ingrain into a lot of our clients. And as we go to the next slide, it'll give you a written example of if I take $100, this is a slide since 1997, $100 invested per month into the market, which is $1,200 a year. On that left side, you'll sit there and see the $1,200 going in, and on that right side is the total that's tallying that's going in, okay? Who spends $100 a month just and don't know where it is at the end of the day? Who does that? Okay, so please go to the next slide. Who knows what that number will look like after 40 years of doing it? So if you do that after 40 years, oh, okay, he just passed it, but I'll give you a number. You put 53,000 in, it comes to, gets me every time I see it, and I know what the number is. $2.3 million. $2.3 million out of 53,000 that has been invested over time. That's what we're talking about, wealth generation. So this slide that you just missed was talking about crypto. What is all that speculating fitting in? It goes into, it's a branch of the tree. It should not be where majority of our dollars are going. It should go into, majority goes into the portfolio, but on the branches, the investing, the stock market, the commodities or the individual stocks or the Bitcoin or something like that, the speculating goes on the branches and not at the base of your portfolio. And as we go to the next one, it shows about how much should go there. Well, about 5% of your portfolio. About 5% of what you're doing should probably go to that speculating idea. The 95 should go to the safe, sound, 99% returning type of idea. Does that make sense? And lastly, fundamentally, we're talking about 4 different things: diversifying, dollar cost average over time, asset allocation, and working with someone that can help you take the emotional side of investing in your money for the long-term plans. Okay? It's Barbara who talks about how do we buy our wealth or purchase our estate.
Thank you. Good morning, family. Thank you so much, Pastor Tarkin, for allowing us to come here. I know this month is your church empowerment month, so thank you so much. So I'm here to talk about how to buy wealth. Has anyone heard how to buy wealth? Anyone? Well, buying wealth is through life insurance. Yes, life insurance. I know oftentimes we don't want to talk about dying, but we have to understand at some point in our lives, death will come knocking at our doors. And we have to make sure we have enough insurance coverage to protect our family. And how we protect our family is through life insurance. When you talk about life insurance, there are 3 questions I want you guys to consider. The first one is, how much do I need? The second one is, what type of life insurance policy is right for me and my family? And then the third would be, who should receive those benefits once I pass away? At Reveal Wealth, what we do, we have calculation formulas that we use to look at the gap that you may have in your coverage. We put strategies together to lower those gaps, to make sure your family has enough insurance to continue that standard of living that you want. Now, I talked about buying wealth. I'm sure some of you guys have heard this, if you're on TikTok or Instagram, infinite banking, being your own bank, bank on yourself. Has anyone heard those concepts before? Yeah. So what that basically means is that it's a way for you to grow cash value in your life insurance policy. And how you grow cash value in your life insurance policy is through dividends. But what's so important is that these strategies are not new. These strategies have been used by wealthy many years. Have you guys ever heard of the Rockefellers? That's what they did. That's how they built their family wealth. They bought life insurance policies. Every time a person in their family was born, they got a whole life insurance policy, and that policy was willed to the trust. So whenever that family wanted to buy something, invest in something, they went through their life insurance policy. They didn't go through the traditional banks, which you all know how the banks are performing right now, right? You know, in Chicago, in California, you had, I think, 2 or 3 banks that recently failed. But the good thing about buying your wealth through life insurance, it allows you to use your cash value to purchase anything you want, to invest. Another story, I have a client, which is really my sister. Her and her husband wanted to renovate their kitchen. They didn't want to use the traditional banking system because, you know, you have to go through all the paperwork, provide, you know, proof of income. His credit wasn't that good. So they called me and wanted to know how much could they use from their life insurance policy. I gave them that number, and they were able to renovate their entire kitchen. Another good thing about it was they didn't have to, their insurance premium did not increase. It stayed the same. So not only were they able to use their cash value to renovate their home, and premiums didn't go up. A couple of years ago, they relocated to Atlanta. Once again, they went into their cash value and used the money to relocate to Atlanta. So I say to you guys, if you really want to take control of your financial future, use this powerful tool to help buy your wealth and help build your wealth. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who will follow up.
All right. So first pitfall I want to talk about is taxes. How many of us love paying taxes? How many of us think you pay too much in taxes? All right, so we're going to talk about that. This here, oh, next slide, I'm sorry. This here is the USDebtClock.org. You can actually pull this up on your phone. What it does is it lists, and all these numbers, really the most important one is this one right here that says national debt. It's going up every minute. Who owns our debt? China, a bunch of other companies own our debt. So what's happening here is the best way for the United States to build and earn more income or build more cash is to do what? Raise taxes. That's right. That's what they do. Next slide. And I got about 10 slides to do in about 3 minutes. I'm going to do a twister thing here. All right. So where do you think taxes are going? Just to show you that taxes are low in comparison to where it was back in the Carter administration. We're looking at 70s and 1983. You see that. It dipped down in the Clinton years in 1990, and then it's starting to go up. And if you look up or Google, what most financial advisors are saying is that the taxes, they will be going up in the future. And it's best to pay taxes now than to pay it later. But again, we know we don't like to pay taxes, so that's the struggle. The struggle is, I don't want to pay taxes. Well, if you don't pay Uncle Sam now, you're going to pay him later. And we're going to show you ways that you might not have to pay him as much. Where is your money going? So you have 3 buckets here. And just by looking at this, you say 1099, now, later, and never. If you had your choice, where would you want most of your wealth to be? 1099, never. That's right. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a couple minutes here. Okay, so most of us, and I would ask you this question, where is your wealth right now? For most of us, it would be in the tax-deferred item. Most of you build your 401ks and things of that nature with your jobs, and those are fine. But just think about it, that you are building a tax haven that Uncle Sam can't wait to get his hands on your money. It's coming. And the thing is that for some of you young people who've put money into the 401k system, you're thinking, hey, I didn't have to pay taxes on it. That's great. But you're looking for accumulation. And that accumulation is going to produce a certain amount towards the end. And you're going to look up like, wow, look at all that money I have in my retirement. Not thinking that Uncle Sam is ready to take his 30+%. Tax favored investments. You have tax exempt, you have muni bonds. I'm sorry, next slide. Next slide, thank you. No, go back. There we go. All right, municipal bonds. You have Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks. Let me ask a quick set of hands. At your job, how many of you have a Roth 401k? A Roth 401k. I would advise you, if you are younger than 60 or no, younger than 55, consider funding the Roth 401k. All right, investment grade life insurance, we talked a little bit about that. Tax deferred items, which is your traditional IRAs, your 401ks, your 403bs. Next slide. I want to break this down. We got about 1 minute. So look at here, you have tax diversification with and without. So pretend you saved up $2 million, and in that $2 million, you're bringing in $100,000. $100,000 per year will be taxed at 22%, meaning that you're into the government at $22,000, which will leave you $78,000 to spend. Now look at the tax diversification side. Now if you got $1 million on the pre-tax side and $1 million in that tax-free bucket, it brings you $50,000 each, and as you see, your taxable liability is now down to $6,000 per year. Savings, roughly about $1,400 a month. That would be nice. Okay? I don't really have time to go over the wealth builders for the business owners here. So how many business owners do we have here? We got a couple. I'm going to knock it out real quick. All right. So most of the time, next slide, I'm sorry. Next slide. Okay. So you see, typically what you want to do is you want to earn money. You want to deduct your taxes. You want to pay your taxes. Then you want to go to reinvest your money. The whole idea of a business owner is to grow their business. But if you see the cycle, each year, each time you go back up to that green box, your number becomes bigger, which means you're going to have to find more deductions, which means you're going to have to pay more taxes. And we go and we do it again. That is called the business cycle. Next slide. The problem is that many business owners will reinvest in their business and not put something aside for themselves. Next slide. Next slide. Right here. Okay, so what we're trying to do is get you to reinvest. So you will deduct, you will pay your taxes, but you'll put some money aside in that little precious red box. It goes back into the business, and as your business grows, you begin to put more money aside for yourself that will enable you to produce a tax-free pension in retirement. So